G'day viewers, it's the end of another totally fucked up week, which means it's time to round it all up in Totally Fucked Up Friday. And the big story this week in our totally fucked up world, the unrest, the upheaval, the possible revolution in Egypt. This follows on from the overthrow of the regime in Tunisia that seems to have fired up a lot of Egyptians who are rioting in the streets, as resulted in quite a few confirmed deaths in Egypt, people being shot or otherwise killed by military forces, and believe it or not, the shutdown of the internet in Egypt. That's it, when you're a dictatorship, you can control the phone companies and ISPs to the point you can cut off your country's communication with the outside world. This final clampdown seems to happen when some videos got released that did show people being shot by the military forces. Now, a lot of people, in the name of freedom, are all for this, and those people may not know the full story. Let's put it this way. Mubarak's been a dictatorship for 30 years, with the support of lots of people outside of Europe. He's had great photo ops with every US president from Reagan all the way through to Obama. Strongly supported by Israel, because there's actually a peace treaty between Mubarak's regime and Israel, somewhat of a rarity for Israel and its neighbours. And for those of you who don't know, yes, it's sure not a democracy, but if Mubarak gets overthrown, it still won't be a democracy. No one's going to replace it with a democracy. In fact, the dominant force in the riots seems to be the Muslim Brotherhood. They've been around since the 1930s, when they had ties with the Nazi Party. And the current incarnation strongly supports violent jihad, wants to reimpose a worldwide caliphate, and is extremely opposed to anything vaguely approaching women's rights. Damn you, reality, not fitting into neat black and white categories of good and evil. Oh, how dare all these people have some pluses and some minuses, and oh, yay freedom. And in not entirely unrelated stories on internet freedom, in the US, the bill to give the US president a kill switch for the internet, effectively shutting down the internet in the US if, the Pentagon or the White House thinks it's necessary, well, that's likely to be reintroduced this year. Yay! And making the name of the group anonymous increasingly farcical, there's been 5 more arrests related to the recent denial of service attacks that were in support of Wikileaks. 5 people arrested in the UK. So anonymous. Change of pace. Let's talk about sex, baby. Namely, Christian evangelicals and shady sexual practices. Now, the stories seem to break out quite often, particularly from the US, of Christian evangelicals who produce strong moral values, go family, then being found out to be sex fiends going to prostitutes or paying for gay male escorts. Well, in Australia, a slight twist. There will be a state election sometime soon in New South Wales, and nominated to stand for the Christian Democrat Party in the seat of Sydney is a man who is a self-confessed sex addict who frequented brothels and had sex with prostitutes, clearly only in his earlier misguided days. Yes, apparently Peter Madden is to be trusted because he admitted to what he did before. When he was in the Christian ministry, he was a sex addict. But now he's all better. And we all know addicts never relapse. Ever. Never happens. He'll never do it again. He's going up against an independent Clover Moore, who are as famous for supporting gay groups, other fringe sexual groups, and the guy has actually criticised her for what he calls her hyper-tolerance. That is the weirdest insult I have ever heard. Hyper-tolerance. It's like he's saying, we've had enough of that being nice to everyone. In the name of Christian love, we're going to strike down that person who insists on being nice to everyone. That's not totally fucked up at all. And finally, in We're All Gonna Die news, Yellowstone Park, for those who didn't know, is one massive hypervolcano. Yes, all the geysers and the hot mud and all that and the earthquakes, it's because the entire park is one massive fucking volcano. I love reading about how the scientists were pretty sure it used to be a hypervolcano and they were looking for where the crater would have been and they couldn't find it because it was so fucking big they didn't know they were standing in the middle of it. Cheery thought, and I've seen these pseudo-docos on the Discovery Channel where they extrapolate what could happen if the Yellowstone mega volcano did erupt again. On the plus side, the latest thinking says that although there's been swelling in the ground, which tends to suggest seismic activity, they actually think it's not a high risk. But I'm going to read their actual words. It doesn't seem to herald an imminent catastrophe. Yo, science dudes, could you do us all a favour, and when you're talking about a possibility that could, I don't know, end all life on Earth, just tell us this is not going to happen. Don't use really vague, maybe not imminently going to kill us all, because, you know, if you say it's definitely not going to happen, and it happens, so fucking what? It's not like anyone can come back at you. We'll all be dead. But when your idea of reassurance is saying, oh, it's not necessarily an imminent sign of the destruction of all life.